Welcome to our fun little study group for KP 5361 Theory and Management of Public Service Organizations. These are the readings from the required text, culture code,
Yes.
secrets of highly successful groups, chapters 1 through 6, which focus on skill 1, build safety.
It is good to be back in the classroom, so to speak. And I have to say, even though this is required reading for a course, and I know everyone listening is probably swimming in syllabi right now,
Yeah.
this stuff is really different.
How so?
I mean, it's the kind of thing that once you see it, you just can't unsee it. It changes how you look at every meeting, every team project, even your family dynamics.
It really does. We spend so much of our time in our professional lives focusing on the visible stuff.
The hardware.
Exactly, the hardware, the strategy documents, the org charts, the quarterly goals, all the things you can put in a binder. But this deep dive, it's about the software running underneath all of that.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's the invisible stuff, the signals we send to one another, often completely unconsciously, that determine whether a group is going to, soar or just totally crash and burn.
And what I love about these first 6 chapters is that it takes this really fuzzy concept, this idea of culture or safety,
Yeah.
and it actually turns it into hard science.
Mm-hmm.
There are experiments, there's data.
And neuroscience, which is just fascinating.
Absolutely. But before we get into the deep theory and the brain scans, I want to take you back to this one very specific and honestly kind of ridiculous experiment. It's one of those classic studies that just makes you scratch your head, but it's really the foundation for everything we're going to talk about.
Yes. You must be talking about the Spaghetti Tower paradox.
The Spaghetti Tower paradox. It sounds like a terrible indie band name.
It really does.
So picture this. You have this guy, Peter Skillman. He's an engineer, a designer. And he sets up this competition. And he's not doing this at, like, a community center. He's gathering 4-person teams at some of the most prestigious institutions on the planet.
Right. We're talking Stanford, UC Berkeley, the University of Tokyo.
Exactly. High-level places, high-level people. And the task he gives them seems almost, deceptively simple on paper. It looks like a kid's party game.
Deceptively simple is the key phrase. So what do they have to work with?
Okay, here's the toolkit.
Yeah.
Each team gets 20 pieces of uncooked spaghetti, just regular pasta. You get 1 yard of transparent tape, 1 yard of string, and 1 standard-sized marshmallow. That's it.
And the goal.
Build the tallest possible freestanding structure. But, and this is the important part, the marshmallow has to be on the very top. It has to be the crown jewel. You can't, tape it to the bottom as an anchor.
Okay, so it's a design challenge. And they have, what, half an hour?
18 minutes.
18 minutes. Wow, that's not a lot of time.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets really interesting. Let's talk about who is competing. In one corner, you have business school students, MBA candidates.
Okay, the future captains of industry.
The people who are literally being trained in leadership, strategy, project management, organizational behavior. They've probably read case studies about this kind of thing.
And they've paid a lot of money for that training.
A lot of money. And in the other corner, you have kindergartners.
Literal 5-year-olds.
Yes. Kids who are, probably more focused on snack time and what color crayon they're going to use next.
Right.
So let me ask you, and you at home can play along. If you had to put $1,000 on the line, who do you bet on? The future CEOs of America or the toddlers?
Well, logically, the smart money has to be on the business students. It just has to. They have, more intelligence in the traditional sense. They understand strategy. They probably have a better grasp of basic physics.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
They know about triangles and trusses and load-bearing structures. It seems like a lock.
It seems like a total lock.
It does, doesn't it? But here's the reveal. And this is what got me. The results were shocking. In trial after trial, the kindergartners absolutely demolished the business students.
And it wasn't even close, was it?
Not even a little bit. The kindergartners built structures that averaged 26 inches tall.
26 inches. Okay.
The business students, they averaged less than 10 inches.
Ouch. That's a statistically significant humiliation.
It is. And just to rub a little more salt in the wound, the kindergartners also consistently beat teams of lawyers and even teams of CEOs.
So it wasn't just a fluke against the business students.
No. The only groups that consistently did better than the 5-year-olds were architects and engineers. Which, that makes sense. Structural stability is literally their job. But for almost everyone else, the kids won. So the big question is how? How on earth do toddlers beat MBAs at a construction project?
It really gets to the core of this whole deep dive, which is about how we define smart in a group setting. We have this assumption that if you put a bunch of smart individuals in a room, you'll get a smart result.
Right, that smarts are additive.
Exactly. But if you actually watch the videotapes of the business school students, you see something else happening entirely. They're engaging in something psychologists call status management.
Status management. Okay, let's unpack that.
Sure.
Because I think we've all been in a meeting where this is the main activity.
Mm.
What does that actually look like in the room with the spaghetti?
It looks like polite positioning. For the first part of the time, sometimes more than half of their 18 minutes, they are subconsciously figuring out who's in charge.
They're not even touching the materials yet.
Barely. Their brains are running these little subroutines. Am I the leader here? Is she? Who has the best idea? Is my idea smart enough? How do I critique his idea without sounding like a jerk? It's all this jockeying for position.
So they're multitasking. They're supposed to be building a tower, but their brain's primary task is actually building a social ladder.
You hit the nail on the head. They're managing their image. They don't want to look stupid. They don't want to seem too aggressive or too passive. And that politeness, that strategic thinking, it eats up a massive amount of cognitive bandwidth.
So while they're doing all this social calculus, what are the kindergartners doing?
They're just a whirlwind of activity. They operate like a single, messy, unified entity. They don't waste a second on who's the leader.
Right.
They just start. They stand shoulder to shoulder, physically close. They grab materials. You just hear this cacophony of here, no, here. They snatch spaghetti from each other. There's no planning phase.
It's pure prototyping, isn't it?
100%. The business students plan, and then they try to execute their grand vision in the last few minutes. They formulate this perfect strategy on paper. And what usually happens?
La marshmallow.
The marshmallow. They put it on top at the very last second, and the whole thing buckles because, surprise, marshmallows are actually kind of heavy, especially relative to a thin piece of pasta.
I love that detail. The marshmallow is the deceptive variable.
It is. And because the MBAs spent all their time planning and managing their status, they have no time left to fix the collapse. The buzzer goes off, and they're left with a pile of rubble.
Where's the kindergartners?
The kindergartners build a little prototype, it falls over, they giggle, and they immediately build another one. They get instant, continuous feedback from the physical materials. They fail early and often.
So the key insight here is that the kindergartners aren't smarter as individuals. They are just working together in a smarter way because they aren't wasting all that brain power trying to figure out who's the alpha here.
Precisely. They are, in a word, safe. They aren't competing for status, they're just playing. And that brings us to the mission of this deep dive. The common wisdom is that group performance is about individual skills. You put 5 geniuses in a room, you get a genius result.
But Culture Code argues that's just plain wrong.
It's completely wrong. It's about the hitting signals that create a safe environment, which then allows those individual skills to actually be used effectively.
It's funny because when you look at the kindergartners, from the outside, it looks like total chaos. It's messy. It's loud. But that messiness is actually efficiency.
Yes. Efficiency and collaboration often looks like a mess. It looks like rapid-fire exchanges, people talking over each other, lots of trial and error. Efficiency and status management looks like a very quiet, polite, orderly boardroom meeting where absolutely nothing gets done.
Okay, so let's dive into the science of this, because it's not just about spaghetti and marshmallows. There's some really powerful research on how just one person can either torpedo or, rescue a group dynamic. You mentioned bad apples when we were prepping for this. Tell me about the Nick experiment.
Okay, so this is a study by a researcher named Will Phelps at the University of South Wales. And he wanted to quantify the impact of a bad apple on a group. So he set up these standard 4-person teams, and their task was to build a marketing plan. A very typical corporate exercise.
Right.
But in some of the groups, he planted an actor, an insider, and we'll call him Nick.
And I'm guessing Nick wasn't there to be a team player.
No, Nick was a saboteur. He was trained to play 3 specific, and I think very recognizable, archetypes.
Okay, what were they?
First was the jerk. This is the aggressive, defiant guy. This is stupid. Why are we even doing this? Just constantly negative and challenging.
We've all met the jerk.
Oh, yeah. Second was the slacker. This is the person who withholds effort. Feet up on the desk, texting on their phone, looking pointedly bored. Just disengaged. And third was the downer. This is the Eeyore of the group. Head on the desk, sighing loudly, radiating depressive, low-energy vibes.
I think every single person listening has worked with a Nick. Probably all 3 versions of Nick, maybe even in the same week.
I think so, too. And the results of the experiment were, frankly, devastating. In almost every single group that Nick infiltrated, performance dropped by 30 to 40%.
30–40%, just from one person.
Just from one person. But the really scary part is how it happened. It wasn't just that the group was now working with 3 people instead of 4. The bad behavior was contagious.
Contagious? What do you mean? Because logically, you'd think if one person is slacking, the other 3 might step up their game to compensate.
That's the rational hope, isn't it? But Phelps found that Nick's behavior was like a virus. If Nick played the downer and put his head on the desk, after a while you'd see the other team members start to slouch. Their energy would visibly drop. Eventually, they'd put their heads down too.
No way.
Yes. If he was the slacker, the others would eventually adopt this attitude of, well, if he doesn't care, why should I? And they'd just rush through the project to get it over with. They subconsciously mirrored his behavior.
That is terrifying. One person can completely rewrite the social contract of the room just by projecting a certain vibe.
They can. They send a signal that effort is not valued here, or aggression is the norm here. And because we're social animals, we're exquisitely tuned to mimic the signals we receive from the group.
There was an outlier, right. In these studies, there's always that one group that bucks the trend.
There's always an outlier. And this is where it gets really hopeful. There was one group that performed exceptionally well, even with Nick in there trying his hardest to ruin everything. They didn't just survive him, they thrived.
So Phelps looks at the tape of this group. What's different? What was the secret ingredient?
It was one guy. We'll call him Jonathan.
What was Jonathan doing? Was he the alpha leader who stood up to Nick and said, hey, shape up or ship out?
That's what you'd expect, right? A leader taking charge, directly confronting the problem. But no, Jonathan did the opposite. He didn't preach. He didn't get into a conflict with Nick. He used what the book calls safety cues.
So instead of fighting fire with fire,
he fought fire with water. When Nick would act like a jerk, Jonathan would react with genuine warmth. He'd laugh, not in a mocking way, but in a way that just diffused the tension in the room. He would lean forward, smile, make eye contact.
So he was sort of killing him with kindness.
In a way. But it was more strategic than that. He would pivot the energy. If Nick was being super negative about an idea, Jonathan would say something like, hey, that's an interesting point, and then immediately turn to someone else and ask, Sarah, what do you think about this other idea? He was a human bridge.
He drowned out the negative signal with positive ones.
Exactly. He sent this steady, nonstop stream of signals that said, we are safe here. We are connected. His negativity isn't going to break us. He essentially neutralized the poison by changing the atmosphere.
And what happened to Nick in that group?
This is the amazing part. Over the course of the session, Nick actually stopped being a jerk. He started contributing. He started helping. Jonathan didn't just protect the group from the saboteur. He converted him.
That feels like magic. But the book argues this is actually biology at work. This gets into the work at the MIT Human Dynamics Lab with Alex Pentland and his sociometers.
I love the sociometer. It sounds like a device from a sci-fi movie. It's basically this badge you wear, like an ID card, but it's packed with sensors.
And it's not recording what people are saying, right?
Not at all. It doesn't care about the words. It doesn't care if you're talking about quarterly earnings or your lunch. It records how you talk. It measures your tone of voice, whether you interrupt, how much you gesture, if you're facing the person you're talking to, how physically close you are.
So it's gathering all the nonverbal data, the metadata of communication.
Precisely. And the discovery they made with this is just wild. You can predict a team's performance. I'm talking about their financial success, their creativity, their ability to hit targets with scary accuracy just by looking at the sociometer data. The content of their conversations is almost irrelevant compared to the patterns of their connection.
That is a huge claim. So what are these signals? What are these belonging cues that the sociometer would have picked up from Jonathan?
Pentland boils it down to 3 fundamental qualities. The first is energy. How much investment is there in the exchange? Is it energetic? Is there a good rhythm to the conversation? A nice back and forth?
Okay, energy. What's second?
Second is individualization. Am I treating you like a unique person? Do I look at you when you speak? Do I listen to you specifically? It's the difference between, say, a CEO broadcasting a speech to a room and 2 people having a real conversation.
And the third?
Third is future orientation. This is the signal that our relationship will continue. It's using phrases like, next time we should try, or this is a great step for us. It implies that this interaction isn't a one-off. We're in this for the long haul.
So Energy, individualization, and future orientation.
Right. And when you combine those three things, you send a powerful primal signal to the brain. And that signal is, you are safe here, you belong.
And this brings us right to the neuroscience part of it, the amygdala. Now, for anyone in our course, we usually talk about the amygdala as the brain's fear center, the fight-or-flight switch.
That's its day job, basically. It's our ancient evolutionary watchdog. It is constantly scanning the environment for threats. A tiger in the bushes, a rival in the boardroom, a passive-aggressive email from your boss. The amygdala sees that and hits the big red panic button. And when that happens, it hijacks the rest of your brain. It shuts down the prefrontal cortex, the smart, rational, complex thinking part, and prepares you to either run away or fight.
Which is exactly what was happening to the business students. Their amygdalas were screaming, threat, threat, protect your status, don't look stupid. So they couldn't think clearly about building a tower.
Exactly. But here's the amazing switch. The research shows that when the amygdala receives those belonging cues, the eye contact, the warmth, the proximity, the things Jonathan was doing, it doesn't just turn off, it actually switches roles.
What does it become?
It goes from being a watchdog to being a guide dog.
A guide dog. I like that metaphor.
It starts using its incredible processing power not to scan for threats, but to build social bonds. It focuses on tracking who's in our group, tuning into their emotional states, strengthening our connections.
Yep.
It basically gets the message, okay, the perimeter is secure, now let's connect and build something together. It frees up the rest of the brain to do the actual work.
But, and this feels like a really important point, it needs constant reassurance.
Yes, this is the catch. You can't just hang a poster that says, we're a family, and expect everyone's amygdala to relax for the rest of the year. The amygdala is paranoid by design. It evolved to assume danger is always just around the corner.
So belonging has to happen from the outside in. We need to be constantly bathed in these little signals to feel safe.
That's right. It's like a fire you have to keep feeding. If you stop sending the signals, the amygdala defaults back to watchdog mode, and you're right back to the business students worrying about their status instead of the marshmallow.
Which is why culture isn't a mission statement. It's a million tiny actions.
Exactly. It's not a thing you achieve, it's a thing you do every day.
Okay, let's take this out of the lab and into the real world. Because this concept of safety explains some of the biggest business upsets in modern history. We have to talk about the story of Google versus Overture.
Oh, this is a fantastic case study. It's a classic David and Goliath story from the early days of the internet. We're talking 2002.
And Overture was Goliath.
Absolutely. They were the undisputed king of search advertising. They were well-funded, they held all the key patents, they had a team of experienced industry veterans. They literally invented the pay-per-click model. Google, at the time, was still the scrappy underdog.
And Google was in the middle of a crisis. Their AdWords engine, which, is now the money printer that funds everything they do, was failing. It was fundamentally broken.
Right. It was showing terrible, irrelevant ads. The example in the book is just perfect. You'd search for something like Kawasaki H-1B motorcycle, and the ads you'd get would be for immigration lawyers who handle H-1B visas.
Which is not helpful if you're trying to buy a motorcycle. And it means nobody clicks, so Google makes no money.
Exactly. It was an existential threat. So Larry Page, the co-founder, sees this and realizes it's a disaster. Now, in a normal company, a company like Overture, probably the CEO would call an emergency meeting. He'd scream at the VP of engineering. He'd set up a task force and demand a report.
Right. The typical top-down, high-pressure response.
But what did Larry Page do?
He did something really weird. He printed out the pages with the bad search results. He walked over to the communal kitchen, the place with the free snacks and the lava lamps where everyone hung out.
In the hub of the office.
Exactly. He pinned the papers to the big bulletin board on the wall, and on top of them, he wrote 3 words in huge, angry-looking letters. These aides suck. And then he just walked away.
These aides suck. I mean, that sounds incredibly aggressive. If my boss did that, my amygdala would be going haywire. I'd be terrified.
You would think so, wouldn't you? But context is everything. Google, at that time, was a very high-safety environment. This was a place where they played roller hockey in the parking lot during breaks. They encouraged loud, open debates. People worked in close proximity.
It was the kindergartners, but with PhDs.
Exactly. So when Page did that, it wasn't interpreted as a threat. It wasn't fix this or you're fired. It was a signal that said, this is a problem for us. This is our shared problem.
It was a challenge, not an accusation. And that's where a quiet engineer named Jeff Dean comes into the story.
Right. Jeff Dean. He didn't even work on the ads team. He was on the core search team. He's in the kitchen on a Friday afternoon, maybe grabbing a coffee, and he sees the note.
And he doesn't think, oh no, the boss is furious, I better keep my head down. He thinks, that's an interesting problem. I bet I could write an algorithm to fix that.
And he wasn't assigned the task?
Yeah.
No one told him to do it. It wasn't his job.
Not at all. He just did it. He went back to his desk, worked all Friday night, came back in on Saturday, came back Sunday night after he put his kids to bed. By 5:05 a.m. Monday morning, he sent an email to the team with a completely new engine he'd built over the weekend.
And that fix, which was all about ranking ads by relevance, not just by who paid the most, that became the foundation of Google's multi-billion-dollar ad business.
It changed everything. And the craziest part is when they asked him about it years later, he could barely remember doing it. Because in that culture, it just felt normal. See a problem, fix a problem. He felt safe enough to take a huge risk, to step way outside his lane because he wasn't worried about turf wars or getting blamed if it didn't work. He knew he belonged, and he knew his contribution would be valued.
Now compare that to Overture during the same period.
Overture was the opposite. It was a classic high-friction, low-safety environment. It was a bureaucracy. Every decision had to go through layers of committees. If an engineer at Overture saw a problem like that, they would have had to write a proposal, submit it to their manager, who would then schedule a meeting with another department.
By the time they decided to act, Google had already lapped them 10 times.
Exactly. Overture failed because they were paralyzed by their own internal friction. Google won because they were safe enough to be fast and adaptable.
It's such a great illustration that safety doesn't mean nice or comfortable. Larry Page scrawling "these ads suck" on a wall isn't comfortable, but it was safe. It was honest.
That is the paradox we have to keep coming back to. Psychological safety is what allows for rigor and high standards. If we don't feel safe, I'm going to lie to you to protect myself. I'll say, oh, the ads are performing within expected parameters. But if we feel safe, I can tell you the truth. Hey, this thing we built isn't working, and we can fix it together.
Okay, let's look at another example, because this one is maybe even more subtle and just. It blew my mind. The Wipro call centers in India.
Right. Wipro, this massive global IT company, but they had a huge, expensive problem, attrition. People were quitting their call center jobs constantly.
Which is common in that industry, right? That's a tough job.
It's a very tough job. You get yelled at by frustrated customers all day. It's repetitive. Turnover at Wipro was something like 50 to 70% a year. It was a revolving door.
So the standard corporate solution to that is to throw money at it. Better pay, better perks.
And they tried all of that. Higher salaries, nicer break rooms, better benefits. It didn't move the needle. People kept leaving. So they brought in a team of researchers to try a completely different approach, an identity experiment.
Okay, walk us through the setup. There were two groups of new trainees.
That's right. Group 1 got the standard corporate onboarding experience. The training was all about Wipro. They learned about Wipro's history, Wipro's success, Wipro's global leadership. You are now part of this great company.
Welcome to the machine. Here is your uniform.
That's a great way to put it. At the end of the training, they were each given a fleece sweatshirt with the Wipro company name on it. Very standard. Leave your old identity at the door. You are now Wipro.
Okay, so that's group 1. What about group 2?
Group 2 was totally different. Their first hour of training wasn't about the company at all. It was about them, the individual. They were asked questions like, what are your unique strengths? What happens on your best days? Tell us about a time you felt truly alive.
So they spent the time talking about themselves, not about Wipro.
Correct. They spent an hour sharing their personal stories and identities with each other. And at the end, they also got a fleece sweatshirt. But this one had their own name embroidered on it, right alongside the company name.
That seems like such a tiny thing. A name on a sweatshirt. A few questions about your best day. Did that actually make a difference?
It made an immense difference. 7 months later, the researchers checked the retention rates. The employees from Group 2 were 250% more likely to still be at the company than the employees from Group 1.
250%. From 1 hour of training and a piece of embroidery.
That's the power of a belonging cue.
What's the mechanism there? Why did that work so well?
It's that amygdala switch again. For Group 1, the message was, you are a cog in our machine. Assimilate. For Group 2, the message was, we see you. We value your individual identity. You personally belong here. That tiny signal, we see you, was enough to trigger that feeling of safety and connection. And when you feel like you belong, you're motivated to stay.
It's just incredible how little it can take. We're not talking about doubling someone's salary. We're talking about taking 1 hour to simply acknowledge their humanity.
That's the sociometer concept in action. The signal of I see you and value you is often more powerful than the content of here's a 5% raise.
So we've seen safety in a high-tech office and a call center. Let's take it to what has to be the most unsafe place imaginable. The trenches of World War I. Flanders, 1914.
The story of the Christmas truce. And it's often romanticized as this, sudden magical moment. A Christmas star shines, a carol is sung, and peace spontaneously breaks out.
But the book argues it wasn't magic at all. It was a predictable outcome of a process.
Exactly. It was a process of accumulating thousands of tiny safety cues. So let's set the scene. These soldiers are living in freezing mud. They're often just hundreds of yards, sometimes even less, from an enemy that is actively trying to kill them. They can hear their voices, they can smell their cooking.
And that proximity is the key, isn't it? Usually in war, the enemy is a distant, abstract concept. But here, they were neighbors.
They were neighbors. And that forced proximity allowed for what the book calls micro-truces. Think about the simple shared rhythms of life. Breakfast is delivered to the front lines at the same time for both the British and the Germans. If I'm trying to eat my breakfast, I don't want to get shot at.
So I'm probably not going to shoot at you while you're eating yours.
It's an unspoken agreement. Let sleeping dogs lie. Then that starts to evolve. Okay, I won't fire while you're using the latrine if you extend me the same courtesy. I won't fire while you're repairing that section of trench. They even started communicating with their weapons, tapping out the rhythms of popular songs with machine gun fire.
No way.
Yes. A German would tap out a tune, and the British would recognize it and tap back a response. They were building a weird, macabre kind of relationship using the very tools of their war.
So long before Christmas Eve even arrived, they had exchanged thousands of these tiny signals of non-aggression.
That's right. Each signal said, I see you, you see me. We're both human beings stuck in this miserable mud. For this specific moment, we are safe from each other. So when Christmas Eve came, and the Germans started putting little Christmas trees up on the parapets of their trenches and singing Silent Night,
The British didn't see it as a trick.
they didn't fire. They saw it as the next logical step in this weird relationship they'd built, so they started singing back.
And then, unbelievably, someone climbs out of the trench.
The ultimate act of vulnerability. Imagine that moment, standing up, fully exposed, in the middle of a kill zone. But because that foundation of safety had been so carefully built, signal by signal, they didn't get shot. They met in no man's land. They buried their dead together. They exchanged gifts tobacco for chocolate. They even played soccer.
It's just an astounding story. Enemies becoming, if only for a day, a temporary family. All because of proximity and repetitive signals.
It shows that our drive to belong is so fundamental that even in the midst of mechanized slaughter, if you give people enough of the right signals, they will connect. It wasn't the Christmas spirit that stopped the war. It was the slow accumulation of safety cues.
You can't really appreciate safety, though, without looking at what happens in its total absence. And the book gives us this chilling example of what it calls an anti-culture. The Minuteman Missileers.
This is a really tough one. These are the Air Force officers in charge of America's land-based nuclear arsenal. They sit in these decaying underground silos in places like Wyoming and Montana, with their fingers on the button of the most powerful weapons on Earth.
And the culture described in the book, it sounds like an absolute nightmare.
It was a culture that seemed almost perfectly designed to destroy psychological safety. There are 3 key factors. First, you have intense isolation. You're underground for a 24-hour shift in a tiny capsule. The book describes them as smelling like sewage and old machinery. It's lonely, it's boring.
Okay, so isolation is number 1.
Second, no future. The Cold War is over. The mission feels obsolete. Being a missileer is seen as a dead-end career in the Air Force. They call themselves the island of misfit toys. It's where you go if you couldn't cut it as a pilot. So there's no sense of purpose.
And the third factor.
This is the killer. Zero safety when it comes to performance. The standard is absolute perfection. They have these regular proficiency tests where you have to score 100%. If you get a single question wrong, 1 out of 100, you can lose your certification. Your career can be ruined. The mantra is literally one mistake and you're done.
So you have people who are isolated, who feel like their job is pointless, and who are absolutely terrified of making a single tiny error. What kind of behavior does that environment produce?
It produces rot, just systemic cultural rot. There were massive cheating scandals with officers texting each other the answers to the tests because they were too scared to fail honestly. There was widespread drug use to cope with the boredom and the stress.
And worse, there were dangerous accidents.
Terrifyingly so. Incidents where nuclear warheads were accidentally left on a runway, completely unsecured, for hours. Blast doors to missile silos being left open. It's the exact opposite of the Jeff Dean story at Google. At Google, if you see a problem, you feel safe to point it out and fix it. In the missile silos, if you admit a mistake, you're punished. So nobody admits to anything, and the mistakes fester and grow until they become catastrophes.
It's just this perfect example of how demanding perfection without providing any safety doesn't lead to excellence. It leads to incompetence and dishonesty.
Exactly. You think you're being rigorous and holding people to a high standard, but what you're actually doing is inducing paralysis and fear. It's a stark contrast to, say, the Navy's nuclear submariners. They also have a zero-fail mission, but their culture is built on intense team cohesion and a deep sense of purpose. The Missileers had none of that.
Okay, that's a powerful contrast. Let's pivot from that low point to the master builders, the people who just intuitively get this stuff right. We have two very different characters here. Greg Popovich of the San Antonio Spurs and the late Tony Shea of Zappos. Let's start with Pop.
Popovich is such a fascinating paradox. If you only see him on TV during a game, he looks like the ultimate grump. He screams at referees, he screams at his star players, he gives these famously curt, one-word answers to sideline reporters.
He's ex-military, Air Force intelligence. He looks like the kind of guy who would run a culture based on fear.
You'd think so. But the Spurs, under his leadership, were arguably the most cohesive, family-like team in all of professional sports. They built a dynasty that lasted for 2 decades.
So what's the secret? How does that work?
It's because he relentlessly balances that military discipline with these huge, genuine displays of care. The book frames it as truth and love.
We all see the truth part on TV when he's yelling at someone for missing a defensive rotation. Give us an example of the love part.
It's the food and the wine. Popovich is a serious foodie and wine connoisseur. When the team is on the road, he organizes these elaborate team dinners. He doesn't just say, okay, guys, dinner's on your own. He books the restaurant, usually a fantastic Italian spot. He personally selects the wine, and he has a world-class palate.
So he's a host.
He's a host. He sits with the players, he puts his arm around them, touches them on the shoulder, and he talks about anything but basketball. He'll ask about their kids, their families, he'll talk about politics, history, current events.
He fills their cups, as one of the players put it.
Literally and figuratively. And because he builds that deep, personal, human connection off the court, it buys him the right to be brutally honest on the court. When he yells at Tim Duncan or Tony Parker, they know on a deep biological level that Pop loves them. So they hear the criticism as, he believes I can be better, not as he thinks I'm worthless.
The book talks about a specific formula for this kind of feedback, the magical feedback study.
Yes, this is from a study of middle school teachers, but it applies to everyone. The researchers found one specific 19-word phrase that dramatically boosted student effort and performance. It wasn't just praise, and it wasn't just criticism.
What was the phrase?
It was, I'm giving you these comments because I have very high expectations and I know that you can reach them.
Let's break that down. Why is that so powerful?
Because it sends 3 critical belonging cues in one sentence. First, I'm giving you these comments, signals. You are part of this group. We are connected. Second, because I have very high expectations, signals. This group is special. We have high standards here. And third, and I know that you can reach them, signals, I believe in you.
Belonging, high standards, and belief.
It's the perfect cocktail. And Popovich, without ever saying those exact words, embodies that sentence every single day.
There's an incredible story about the 2013 NBA Finals that just perfectly captures this in action. The Spurs are playing the Miami Heat. It's Game 6. They're seconds away from winning the championship. And then Ray Allen hits that miracle, backpedaling three-pointer from the corner to tie it.
They end up losing in overtime. They were devastated, absolutely gutted. Tony Parker was openly weeping in the locker room. The team was just silent, in shock.
Most coaches in that moment would have been furious. They would have yelled about the missed rebound or sent everyone to their hotel rooms to sulk.
But what did Pop do?
He ordered a family dinner. He took the whole team, coaches, staff, everyone, out to this beautiful restaurant. He sat them all down. He ordered amazing food and incredible wine. And he was with them. He went from table to table, putting his arm on their shoulders, talking to them, reminding them that he loved them.
He rebuilt the connection immediately.
He sent the strongest possible signal. Even in the face of the most crushing defeat of our professional lives, we are still a family. This bond is more important than the loss.
And that act of rebuilding their safety is what allowed them to come back the next year with the same team and win the championship. It's an amazing story of resilience built on connection.
Okay, let's shift from the basketball court to, well, a trailer park in Las Vegas. Let's talk about Tony Kia.
A very different kind of master builder. Tony Xia, the late CEO of Zappos, he didn't see himself as the leader in a traditional top-of-the-pyramid sense. He had this great quote, "I'm not the best plant in the greenhouse. My job is to be the architect of the greenhouse."
And his primary metric for a healthy greenhouse was something he called collisions.
Yes, serendipitous encounters. He had this almost fanatical belief that innovation, creativity, and community come from people bumping into each other unexpectedly. He was obsessed with something called the Allen curve.
The Allen curve. This comes from a researcher at MIT, Thomas Allen.
That's right. Allen studied communication patterns in engineering teams, and he found something astounding. The frequency of communication between two people drops off a cliff after just 8 meters of physical distance.
8 meters, that's what, 25 feet? It's just across a large room.
It's basically nothing. If your desk is more than 8 meters away from someone else's, the probability that you will communicate with them even once a week drops to near zero. And if you're on a different floor, you might as well be in a different country.
Your brain just subconsciously files them away as not part of my immediate tribe.
Exactly. So Xi's whole philosophy was to use physical design to fight the Allen curve. He engineered for density. At the Zappos headquarters, he deliberately closed off certain exits so everyone had to funnel through the same main door, forcing them to see each other. He wanted bottlenecks.
He even messed with the layout of parties, right?
Yes. If he was at a party and he saw people settling into comfortable, isolated little circles, he would literally go and drag a couch across the room to break up the flow and force people to rearrange and interact with new people. He was constantly engineering connection.
Because he knew that all those belonging cues we talked about, the eye contact, the energy, the proximity, they can only happen when people are physically together.
That was his core belief, and he even recruited that way. He wouldn't offer someone a job, he'd just invite them to Las Vegas to hang out for a few days.
Come hang out, you'll figure it out.
And it worked. He'd bring in a talented artist or entrepreneur. They'd spend 3 days just having these collisions with the vibrant community he was building. And by the end of it, they'd be ready to uproot their entire lives and move to Vegas. They were drawn in by the powerful gravitational field of belonging he had created.
So we've covered the science, we've seen the case studies, the extremes, the masters. Let's make this really practical now. This is the toolbox section. How can we, the people listening to this, the students in PP 5361, actually start doing this?
Yes, because the book is very clear that building safety isn't a personality trait, it's a skill. It's like learning to pass a soccer ball. It requires conscious practice.
Okay, let's run through some of the specific techniques. Technique number 1, over-communicate listening.
This is so much more than just being quiet when someone else is talking. It's an active posture. It's tilting your head. It's keeping your eyes unblinking on the speaker. It's making those little affirmative noises. Yes. It can feel a little intense at first, but it sends a powerful signal to the other person's amygdala. I am locked in. What you are saying is important.
And a big part of that is not interrupting.
A huge part. Every interruption, no matter how well-intentioned, breaks the flow of safety. It sends a microsignal that says, my thought is more important than the one you're in the middle of.
Okay, that's a great one. Number 2, spotlight your own fallibility, especially if you're the leader.
This is so counterintuitive for leaders. We think we need to project an aura of perfection and confidence. But to build safety, you need to show that you're human and you make mistakes. Use phrases like, this is just my 2 cents, I could be wrong, or what am I missing here?
The example from the book is R.C. Buford, the GM of the Spurs, admitting the author, I'm terrified of the future.
Can you imagine a top executive saying that? It's an incredible act of vulnerability. And what it does is it closes the power distance. It makes it safe for everyone else in the room to be honest about their own uncertainties and mistakes.
Right. It invites the group to help. Okay, number 3, embrace the messenger.
This is critical. Don't just tolerate bad news. You have to actively celebrate the person who brings it to you. If someone comes to your desk and says, that project we launched is failing, your first response has to be, thank you so much for telling me this. Because if you shoot the messenger, even once, you guarantee you will never hear bad news again until it's too late.
You'll be the last to know the tower's falling.
Exactly. Next up, preview, future connection.
This is about signaling that the relationship has a future. The example was the St. Louis Cardinals coach showing a video of a star picture to a group of minor leaguers and saying, "See that guy? 3 years ago, he was sitting right in that seat where you are now."
It creates a bridge between their present and their potential future. It says you belong here not just today, but in the future of this organization.
Number 5 is one I like. Overdue thank yous.
It can feel a little cheesy or excessive, but the data shows it works. Popovich thanking his multimillionaire superstars for allowing him to coach them. Chef Thomas Keller making a point to thank the dishwasher first at his restaurant openings. It signals, I see your contribution, no matter how small it seems.
And the research shows that receiving thanks makes people more helpful to total strangers later. It makes generosity contagious.
It primes the whole system for cooperation. Okay, next, pick up the trash.
This is what the book calls muscular humility, the leader doing the menial work. Ray Kropak, the founder of McDonald's, was famous for picking up trash in the parking lots. John Wooden, the legendary basketball coach, would sweep the locker room floor himself after practices.
It sends an undeniable signal. We are all in this together. No one is above any task.
All right, 2 more. Capitalize on threshold moments.
The first few moments of any interaction are critical. The first day on the job matters immensely. That's when a person's brain is asking on a loop, am I safe here? Do I belong? You have to answer that question with a loud yes immediately.
Like the Wipro sweatshirt. Or the story about Pixar telling new hires on day 1, whatever you were before, an accountant, a programmer, you are a filmmaker now.
Exactly. And the last one, avoid the sandwich feedback.
Oh, this is a classic management mistake, the compliment sandwich.
Right. Don't hide a piece of negative feedback between 2 positive comments. You did a great job on that presentation intro. The middle part was a total mess, but your conclusion was strong.
It just confuses people. Their brain doesn't know which signal to pay attention to.
So what's the alternative?
Separate them completely. Handle the negatives with a collaborative 2-way dialogue focused on learning. Handle the positives with short, clear bursts of public praise. Okay, that is a fantastic, practical toolkit. Let's try to bring this all home. We started with kids building spaghetti towers. We ended with picking up trash. Yeah. What's the grand synthesis here for our study group?
I think the core concept is this. Being smart is not enough. The business students were smart, Overture was filled with smart people, but they failed because they weren't safe. The kindergartners and Google succeeded because they created environments where connection mattered more than status.
And that central paradox we keep coming back to, that feeling safe isn't about being comfortable, it's what allows a group to do really hard things.
Exactly. In the highest performing groups, that foundation of safety is what makes it possible to have loud debates, to give brutal feedback, to take big risks, because everyone knows that at the end of the day, the underlying connection is solid.
So we always like to leave you with a final thought to mull over. As you go about your week, look at the groups in your life, your team at work, your class projects, your family, your friends, and ask yourself, are you operating like the business students, carefully managing status and being politely ineffective?
Or are you operating like the kindergartners? A little messy, physically and emotionally close, and focused on building something tall together. And maybe more importantly, what is one small signal? A thank you. A moment of focused listening. An admission of a mistake that you could send today to start building a little more safety around you.
Thanks for joining the study group today. We'll see you for the next set of chapters.
Stay safe, everyone.